Just like the front of this slideshow says, you have a lot of tools you get to use when we work with clay. They're called pottery tools, but it's good to know what they're for. And you are very lucky. You get your own set of pottery tools. Now, you won't have every single tool. You'll have to share some, but you'll be able to store your tools in this plastic container. It has your name on it, and it also has a number. This number corresponds to the number of your shelf, as well as the number that is on your tool. So our first tool is a ribbon tool. So your kit has a ribbon tool. It's really great for scraping, carving, hollowing out small areas. Now there's different sizes for a ribbon tool. You might get one that's like this, or you have one with slightly bigger loops, or you might have one that's a little bit smaller. So in terms of using a ribbon tool, it's great for making marks in the clay, or if you have a small form and you need to hollow out part of it. Our next tool is called a rubber rib. It's used to smooth and shape clay. It's also great for smoothing out slabs. So for example, this is a slab. So yours might be this size or this size. They're both the same, but the point is that you can curve it because it is made of rubber. So you can smooth out your slab just like this. I'm just pulling this flat side against the surface. But if I have a 3D form, I can also curve the edge to smooth out the outside of the form. I also have some of these in the clay room. This is also a rib, but it's made of metal and it's serrated. This is great if you need to make little score marks or you want to make texture, but this will not be in your kit. A needle tool. This is great for drawing on the clay, poking holes, also for scoring, again, scoring and slipping. So yours will end up like this. It's not literally a needle, but you could hurt yourself if you're not careful. So again, I can draw lines into the clay, and when I'm making my score marks, this is an example of scoring. Your kit will have two sculpting tools. Sculpting tools are used to smooth out clay, attach, cut pieces, and add texture. Now there's a couple different types of sculpting tools. Yours might be made of wood. So again, you can make marks with it if you're making texture. Yours might be wooden. It might be made of plastic, and there's all different shapes, and it all depends on what you need to do. Sometimes this is a great tool to use when you need to smooth out something that you've attached together because it's easier than using your finger. This could allow you to get into something really small that your fingers can't reach. Sponge. This is a great tool using for smoothing the clay surface, especially when you have a 3D form. So here's a piece of clay. You're going to have half size of a sponge. You don't need an entire sponge. This is not used for cleanup. Don't make the mistake of trying to clean up with this because it will get dirty. It will get full of clay. But you can use it to smooth out the surface. Again, it just depends on what you're doing, but it's a good tool to have. The next set of tools are the tools that you will have to share in the clay room. Fettling knife. So a fettling knife is a much needed tool. We use it for trimming and cutting the clay. You could use it for carving, you can use it for slicing, you can use it to like shave the clay as well. But this is a particularly expensive tool, usually about $7 to $8 just for one fettling knife. Now it is not sharp, it's dull, kind of like a butter knife, but it's a tool we need to use often when we're cutting pieces of clay. But it is a tool that you are sharing. So please use this kindly, share them. Another tool, it's not really a tool, it's an equipment. It's called a bat. It's a base to store your artwork on. I wouldn't really use it to work on your project with, but it's a good base to use when you need to move your project around the room. So our bats come in different sizes. It's basically a piece of plywood that has been cut. Now they are covered in plastic wrap, because your clay project can dry out if it's touching the bare wood, because this will absorb the moisture from your clay and you'll be really sad. But for example, I have this artwork that I made for my advanced class, so I can move it around easily. I don't have to pick it up and touch it. I can put it on the bat. I can store it in my bag. Item, which is also more of an equipment, is called a banding wheel. This is also a base for your project, and it spins. This is not to store your work on. It's just something to put your artwork on, and you can turn it instead of having to touch it with your hands. So for example, here's a banding wheel. So just, the top of it spins, and they are a little heavy. So we have a couple different ones. We have these that are metal. We also have these blue ones. These are much more heavy. So please be gentle with them, but they're a great tool to use when you need to just rotate your artwork without touching it with your hands. Now, another tool that you'll be sharing in the classroom is called a ball stylus tool. It's for modeling forms, great tool for drawing lines, making details. So they look like this. They have a ball at the top, and there's a smaller ball at the bottom. This one only has one ball at the top. Now, what makes this different from a needle tool is when you draw the lines, you're going to get much thicker lines. And then you can see when I take a needle tool, the line difference, right? A little bit deeper. So this is great for drawing. This is great for maybe making textures. Also works really well on leather hard clay. A wire cutter tool is meant for cutting larger pieces of clay, not tiny pieces. And you've already been using this when you've been learning how to wedge your clay. And you'll see me use this when I'm cutting pieces of clay from a bag. So here's a piece of clay. It has two wooden ends and there's a wire in between. And to use it, you just hold it taut, you keep it tight as if like you're flossing your teeth. And then you just wrap it around the piece of clay, pull through, and there it's been cut in half. This is more efficient than trying to use a fettling knife that can get stuck. So this is great for cutting large pieces of clay. It's actually called a wire clay cutter, but we just call it a wire cutter. Texture mat and texture tools and texture rollers. So we're applying textures onto the clay surface. There are so many ways to create texture. I have a couple texture rollers, so you roll it on the surface. We have different designs and you can actually pop this off and change what's on there. So we have a couple different designs you can use. We also have these larger ones. Now you can tell it's a lot easier to use a texture roller on a slab than on like a big form. And in terms of a texture mat, we have a bunch of different ones. This is a new one. And you can apply the pressure with your hand or roll it with like a rolling pin. And when you push into this clay surface and remove it, you end up with a texture. So you can totally experiment with these. They're just really cool tools to have. Another tool that you have to share in the clay room is a rolling pin. We use this for flattening the clay and for making clay slabs. Rolling pin, you're familiar with this with cooking, but our rolling pins are made specifically for ceramics. They're actually intended for ceramics. So to use it, you would have your clay and you would roll your rolling pin on it. But often to make a slab, we also need another part of this, which is called wooden slats. These are pieces of wood. They're used for creating leveled and flat slabs, specifically with different thicknesses. But you notice like these ones, see how the edges are green and they're labeled 1/4 inch. So this is a 1/4 inch thickness. So if I wanted my slab to be 1/4 inch thick, and you'll be learning how to do this later on, I put my wooden slats on each side and I then roll my rolling pin back and forth. And as I create the pressure, eventually the slab shouldn't get any thinner than the thickness of these wooden slats. Tools or other things you're going to be sharing in the classroom. Paint brushes. This is used to distribute and apply slip And then we already know about slip, which is watery clay. This is used to attach clay pieces together. So they go together and you'll find them next to each other in the ceramic studio. So I'm going to show you, this is my big piece of clay I had flattened. Here's a piece of clay. I want to attach this to the clay surface. Now if I just push it on, the problem with that is it's not going to stick. It sticks because it's wet, but once this clay completely dries out, this will fall off because there's nothing helping it stay glued on together. So our paintbrushes are pretty thick. They're meant to hold liquid and slip. So we have slip in these containers here. I'm often making new slip all the time. My TA is often making slip. So to score, I would make all these little marks on the clay, and the score creates these little divots basically. And you do need to score the other surface that you're attaching to. They don't have to line up, but the slip gets inside the scored area and it becomes like a glue, and obviously we push a little pressure on it to help it stay together. Now if I were to completely dry this clay out and fire it, it would stick together because the slip is going to do its job. We know about cookie cutters as something that we use to make cookies, but we can also use them to cut out specific shapes with the clay, and we have different shapes. Some are metal, some of them are made of plastic, and to use it you just push it into a clay slab and then you end up with either the positive or negative space that you want. So we do share these, but they're a great tool. We also have stamps. I've been working on collecting a series of stamps. They're meant to impress a design or a shape onto the clay. Now we do have some of these stamps that are made of plaster. Please be gentle with these. And what you do is you push it into the surface of a slab and you end up with an impression of that actual design. Now I could also cut this out if I want. I could cut out this shape and use it for something. We also have these really cool 3D printed stamps. Please be gentle with these. These are homemade and they are a great investment, but they also create really cool designs on the clay. Hole is a hole cutter. This is great for poking holes into the clay. Be aware, they're sharp. There's different circles, different sizes. To use it, you push it into the clay surface, make a circle, pop it back out, and remove what you don't need. Spray bottle, great for distributing water. We use this during cleanup. You can also spray your clay with this as well.